Folks, we have a CTO AI researcher who is a Stanford philosophy expert. This is one of the most thoughtful and fascinating conversations, not only about AI research, but also organizational design and leadership in the age of AI. You're going to love this one.
Hi, I'm Bryan McCann. I'm the CTO and co-founder at U.com. I was an AI researcher in a past life and a philosopher before that one. So I'm super stoked to talk to Jeremy and Henrik today about AI, where we're going, and everything it means for our teams, our organizations, and ourselves as people.
Wow. You know what, Henrik, that was a really fun one because you and I had some disagreements about where we wanted to take the conversation, didn't we?
Yes, I know. And I was asking ChatGPT the other day how we can improve, and it suggested that we should disagree more.
Oh, did it?
There you go.
Wow. Did it suggest that you suggest that to me, or did it suggest that you keep that knowledge to yourself?
It suggested that we should have ideas or points that we were prepared to talk about in the podcast where we knew that we came down on different sides.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. So where do we come down to different sides in this episode, Henrik?
Well, I think the reason why I really enjoyed Bryan and how he's thinking about it is because
I
am
so thoughtful. What a thoughtful
dude.
Wow.
Really, and just clearly like incredibly smart. I am quite fascinated about this idea that the future of work, the future of organizational design is going to mirror neural networks, which she talked about. And I have for a while been, and I'll give you a little bit of background. And so I think a lot of companies are going through these kind of three phases. Phase one is how do you upgrade the capabilities of your staff? Two, how do you create agents or agentic workflows to be more efficient? And then I think the third one is kind of like, what's next? And so a lot of companies seem, not the people that are really on the cutting edge seem to be kind of pausing between 2 and 3. And they are hitting your Parkinson law where they go like, I don't understand. We've implemented 40, 50 agents in our organization, but we're not really seeing the efficiency gain. My thesis is that you basically have now people that can do jobs that belong in other teams. And because that they are not happening at the same time, you won't be able to reduce staff in one department
FTEs,
because they can from it. So you basically have this weird kind of jigsaw or mismatch of skill. And then what people do is, of course, they just fill their time up. And so they've got 30% more time and then they get busy doing other. And so I do speculate that in the next year or two, we will see more organizations that will need to ask themselves this fundamental question, which is, how do we design ourselves for an organization that is increasingly agentic? When we see that the agentic workflows, for example, the case I mentioned with people that are applying with AI and then their job applications are reviewed with AI, it basically shows that the way that the workflow was designed was for humans in a world of scarcity. And now that you have agents in a world of abundance, then you need to reinvent a new workflow. And so getting inspiration of what that might look like, how you might be more efficient and get an exponential kind of upside to your AI work, I find to be fascinating and don't hear that many people talk about. And so when Bryan kind of started to speak about this, I was like, you really have my attention now. And so, but I think what you might have reacted to is that there is this kind of like built-in assumption there that you are giving task and sometimes you will give it to an agent and it will be as good as a human. And then there is, I think, the unfortunate consequence that sometimes there will be people that won't want to upgrade, that won't be the people that will understand how to put on the Iron Man suit. And at that point, they'll just lose their relevancy in the organization because the agent will be able to perform that specific task more efficient than they do. And you can't upscale them to be kind of the managers of many agents or tasks. And so you being such a kind, thoughtful person, I think sometimes come to the table. I'll say the statement, but I mean as a question, that people are upgradable. And so it is just about finding the way of teaching them the skills. And I think I might come from a more cynical kind of perspective where if you are a startup and you don't have the resources to do that, there's a time, as Bryan was saying, where you just have to say, well, your way of working or your expectation of how we work in this organization is just not how it's going to be. So I love you and leave you.
Love me, leave me. I I was really inspired by his, I love the phrase keep the GPUs full. As a kind of personal mantra and then as a team mantra. And I think that's actually, right now, the bandwidth limitation is mostly, the reason most organizations can't grow more, if you say, what's got a stranglehold on your business, folks would say, well, if we had more smart people, we could do more, right? But we can't hire them. We got to grow at the right rate. But intelligence is no longer the rate limiting factor. And no one can reckon with that. And because why? You have to think in terms of we got to keep the GPUs full. That's how you max out the intelligence of the organization. But individuals and most forget teams, very few individuals are thinking in terms of what can I pass? What's a full night's worth of work that I can get to the point that I can pass off by the time I leave work today? Because I value the nighttime cycle of experimentation so much, I wouldn't dare go to sleep without giving an agent something to do, right? And so to me, that when he talked about scaling himself up, and then he said, quote, every minute of my time is better spent scaling my team up. To me, maybe it's a humanistic thought, but set aside whether people can be scaled up, the fact that he's now observing the best use of his own time as a leader is enabling his team to get scaled up. To me, it was not a humanist thing, it's more just a practical. How do you manage in a world where you're trying to give everybody the mindset, keep the GPUs full?
Well,
Because
one thing that he was
most people
mentioning,
want to clock off and they want to be
but one
done.
thing that he was mentioning also, which I don't do this normally, that's your trade, is to write down like a sentence. And he said, figuring out how to have impact is a new skill. And I
Uh-huh.
do think that
Uh-huh.
is so true. And I think, and I guess as an entrepreneur, I get excited about because that is like an innate entrepreneurial capability. Like,
Mhm.
what do I have to do next? What is the next task that I throw myself out? How can I have an impact and I can move that forward? And the way that I look at entrepreneurship is often through these capabilities, which are not do you code, do you design, or do you product manage? It is more do you have agitation? So do you kind of propel stuff forward? Do
Mhm.
you have gravity? Can you tell a story in a way that people understand it? All models understand it. And do you have resourcefulness? Can you do a lot with a little? And those three things are often the trademarks that I look at when I invest in entrepreneurs, for example. I think
Mhm.
in the same way, and maybe I'm just seeing it because I believe more entrepreneurship is good for the world. But I do think that these deeply entrepreneurial skills are what is required in the future organization because everybody will be able to do everything. And so what they have to do is to figure out how do I, as an individual, have impact?
Uniquely add impact. Yeah. I mean, he said,
Yes.
everybody in my company should do that every single day. Everybody should do that every single day.
I really think that that is such an important kind of lesson for people who wants to have a real thriving career. And I think for organizations that want to figure out who should we identify to really promote and then I'm not an AI researcher, so I'm just so fascinated when you start to take these somewhat abstract models and then you apply them as a
Right. To
philosophy
org
to
design. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That part of the conversation definitely reminded me. I think it was with the team from Applied Intuition, Cass or Eunice, talking about this idea of guilds, right? And what if organization of the future is actually guilds of, small groups of people executing experiments, as you say, with SEAL team kind of accountability. What did you call it? Not skip level. That's kind of the
Hmm.
managerial term, but what was the neural network term? Is that redundancy or I can't remember
I
exactly what
can't
it
remember
was.
either.
This is where his agent, he talked about that the next level of agents are these predictive agents that basically jump in. So in his world, an agent would jump in and give you the right term.
Well, I mean, that, by the way, a great context to where, feature. And I love that vision of providing immediate value. I think it's super cool. It's a super cool vision of the future. That would be to give me my next line. I mean, the ultimate obviously is help me know exactly what the right thing to say is.
But that's not that far away, right? You could imagine that,
No.
I have granola running on these calls, right? And so I could probably just ask it now, but from there and it coming up with feeders and saying, hey, you should remember, think about this or ask about this, or it's time to stop interrupting or whatever feedback could be, right? Would be not, it doesn't seem to be way into the future.
Going back to the management or leadership thread for a second, one of the things he said that I really enjoyed and wrote down was when he's working with his engineers, he said, step one is try to get AI to do the thing. Step two is if it still can't, try again. And step three, if it still can't, commission a research project and come tell me, because the stuff you can't figure out how to get AI to do, that's the stuff I want to know about. I thought that was a really, really cool way to think about. At no point am I saying don't use AI. And in fact, what I'm saying is your job is to figure out how to use AI. And the only time I want to know is if you can't figure out how AI could help with this. That's like such a total paradigm shift.
I agree. Do you have anything else that we should add?
No, I mean, I would say this. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, hit like, hit subscribe, share the teaser or the full episode with a friend who needs to know they've got to level themselves up and they've got to think about what impact they want to have in the world. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.